Hi everybody, it's Maura Rhonda from the Jewish Virtual Preschool and the Learning Tree. I wanted to talk about this concept called the formative years. Now, as we know, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, the high holidays are coming up, they're fast and approaching, and there isn't going to be a lot of time in school devoted to formal learning. And that's okay. I mean, I hear a lot of parents say, oh, come on, what is the big deal? Why do I need to invest so much time and energy and money into teaching my children about the holidays? I mean, after all, my child's only 3 years old, or my child's only 4 years old, or my child's only 5 years old. They have their entire lives to learn about the holiday. What's so special about having to, learn with them and create opportunities for them to learn now? Okay, that is a perspective. But I want to actually address something behind those words. And it speaks to kind of like assumptions that we are making about what's going on in the mind of our child now. That somehow, early childhood education isn't real education. It isn't real learning. That real learning is going to occur in the elementary years or in the high school years or in the university years. So let's try to understand that. Why are these called the formative years? Why are they called the foundation years if really the important learning is going to occur, later on in life? In fact, I hear a lot of people say, it doesn't even really matter where I send my child to school as long as the environment is clean and the more clean and the more it is warm and loving. That's really all that matters. Okay, it does matter. Those qualities do matter. The environment needs to be clean and sanitary, and the teacher does need to be warm and attentive. But it's not the only thing. So let's speak to that concept of when is the most important stage of life to learn. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper. We know that by the time an embryo is 5 weeks old, and it's only the size of an apple seed, there's a brain present there. By the time it's 8 weeks in utero, the brain and the central nervous system is already starting to grow. And by the time a child is born, it already has over 100 billion neurons in place, which is about almost the same amount of neurons in an adult brain. However, there is a big difference between a baby brain and an adult brain. Well, for sure, the baby brain is a lot smaller, and it's only about 25% of the weight of an adult brain. However, here is the kicker. By the time a child is 6 years old, it's already gone through a tremendous, tremendous growth spurt. It is actually making about 700 neural connections a second, such that the brain is quadrupling in size during those formative years, and now the brain is 90% the size of an adult brain. I mean, that is a huge amount of growth. In fact, that amount of growth is unparalleled in any other stage of life. So the formative years is hugely important. What we want to ask ourselves is, how do we take advantage of this period of time? Because there is a huge opportunity going on in these formative years that we need to pay attention to. How do we build better brains? We are able to have an impact on our children's futures right now. Yes, when they're 3 years old, when they're 4 years old, when they're 5 years old, it is huge. It is really important. So let's look at how brains are constructed. The way a brain is built, the way it grows and it develops, and it moves through different developmental stages, and it actualizes its potential, is through neural connections. Yes, a baby is born with billions, hundreds of billions of neurons, but those neurons don't have any kind of connectivity. We want there to be strong neural connections within the brain. How does that happen? So we see that neural connections, the building of a brain, is environment dependent. It's experience dependent. And it has to involve struggle. Just like a muscle in a body, the brain is like a muscle, right? And just like if you want to build muscle, you have to exert effort. So too, in order for those neural connections to strengthen, a child needs to be able to practice something over and over again and to struggle within it. We don't want to overwhelm a child by presenting them with creating opportunities that are too advanced for them that will lead to frustration. But we do want to create challenges for our children and scaffold skills that they can eventually master. Because once a child masters certain skills, so now the brain can go on to focusing on the next stage of development. It frees up cognitive energy for other things, because learning new things, the brain building stuff, takes a tremendous amount of energy. So we want to create opportunities for kids to learn things and to practice things over and over and over again. Now, the good news about having to create opportunities for a child to do the same thing over and over again is we don't actually have to work so hard, because Hashem has programmed into each child these kind of like inner drives, these inner motivations, these inner calls to growth. So children are attracted to things in their environment that are at the cutting edge of the areas in which they need to grow. So language, children are attracted to language. They are motivated to use language in an effort to express themselves and to master. Sometimes you cannot get a child to stop talking or vocalizing or babbling because they are in a sensitive period for developing language. It could be gross motor skills. It could be social emotional skills. It could be whatever the skill is. There is almost like an inner teacher within each child that is driving the child to look for opportunities to repeat those actions. So now that we understand that there is a huge learning curve that occurs in these formative years, and there's also a tremendous opportunity that we as parents and caregivers, teachers, can take advantage in order to aid our children in actualizing their potential, the next question is, what is the best way in which children learn? And that leads us to this kind of new buzzword in preschools and in early childhood education called hands-on learning. Now, hands-on learning isn't, I don't think, unique, specific to children, except for in a certain respect, which I'll get to in a moment. We all learn best by doing. So, for example, my daughter is taking a driver's ed course. She could sit in a classroom learning about how to drive a car, but it isn't until she actually gets on the road, behind the wheel and on the road, that she's actually going to learn about driving. I can take as many parenting education courses as I want, but it's not going to be until I come home with that infant that I'm going to actually learn what it means to be a parent. Learning is a full body experience. It's not just from the neck up. And that is true for us, and it's even more true for children. Why is that true for children? They are primed, they are almost hypersensitive to learn through certain modalities during those early years. So while we are all kind of hands-on learners, and learning occurs through doing, young children have a heightened advantage, almost like a hypersensitivity to learn through doing, to learn through their senses, not just any senses, but through hands-on learning. And I want to show you a very kind of bizarre but fascinating illustration that a scientist created. It's called the sensory motor homunculus. And what this figure is, I'm going to show it to you in a second. What this figure is it is a representation of what the body would look like in proportion to the amount of real estate on the surface of the brain that is devoted to that sense. So what you're going to see is that the hands on this figure is disproportionately larger than any other sense in the body. Why is that? Because there is more real estate on the brain surface devoted to taking in information through the hands. The hands are a very powerful vehicle through which the brain becomes developed, takes in information, organizes things, and attaches meaning to it. So the model of the sensory motor homunculus tells us how children are programmed to learn and how important it is for us to provide them with opportunities to grow those neural connections through hands-on learning.